Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're standing in a dim garage with a black grandmother who's running her fingertips over an empty oil stain on the concrete where a car once sat for 25 years. Right now, she can still smell wax and motor oil, still see her husband bent over that old BMW on Saturday mornings. And she's replaying the moment she handed the keys to her son and daughter-in-law because they said it would fund a beauty salon and keep his memory alive. In a few minutes, you'll walk with her into a living room where diamond earrings and tennis bracelets sparkle a little too brightly for a brand new business. Sit beside her as she stares at an empty driveway and tries to convince herself she's just being paranoid. And then feel the floor drop out when the car dealer calls to say, "Ma'am, I found a hidden box in your BMW, and your name is on it." You'll open that box with her, see the stacks of documents and the letter her husband wrote 15 years ago because he knew their son and his wife might try to bleed her dry. And you'll be there when she realizes she is not poor, not helpless, and definitely not alone. If you've ever felt like people were smiling at you while quietly counting what they could take, or watched someone turn your grief into their opportunity, this story may land so close to your own bruises that you might not emotionally survive it. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from and how our little nighttime circle stretches across the map. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for a gentle hush of noise. And let's begin our journey together tonight. An old BMW was all that remained from my husband. My daughter-in-law sold it to fund her so-called beauty salon business. The next day, she showed up with jewelry worth $20,000, but then the car dealer called me. "You need to see what I found in your car. I'm glad to have you here." Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Claudia and I'm 58 years old. 6 months ago, I became a widow when my husband Samuel passed away from a heart attack. We'd been married for 32 years and I thought I knew what grief felt like. I was wrong. The real grief didn't come from losing Samuel. It came from losing myself in the process. Samuel had been my anchor, my voice when I couldn't find my own. He handled the finances, made the big decisions, even ordered for me at restaurants because I was always too nervous to speak up. After he died, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, going through the motions without really existing. Our son Derek had always been distant, but after the funeral, he and his wife Keisha started coming around more often. At first, I was grateful. The house felt so empty without Samuel's voice echoing through the rooms, his coffee mug on the kitchen counter, his side of the bed still perfectly made because I couldn't bear to mess it up. "Mom, you look tired," Derek said one afternoon about 3 months after the funeral. He was sitting at my kitchen table, the same one where Samuel used to read the morning paper. Keisha stood behind him, her manicured fingers resting on his shoulders. She always did that like she was marking her territory. "I'm managing?" I replied, though we both knew it wasn't true. I'd lost 15 nails since Samuel's death. Not because I was trying to, but because food had lost all taste. Everything tasted like cardboard now. Keisha stepped forward, her voice gentle in that way that always made me uncomfortable. It sounded practiced, like she'd rehearsed it. "Claudia, we've been thinking. You shouldn't be dealing with all of Samuel's things alone. It's not healthy." I looked around the living room at Samuel's recliner that still held the impression of his body, at his collection of classic car magazines stacked neatly on the side table. I'm not ready to get rid of his things yet. We're not talking about everything, Derek said quickly. Just the car. Dad's BMW is just sitting in the garage collecting dust. It needs to be driven, maintained. You don't even have a license anymore. That was true. I'd let my license expire 2 years ago when my eyesight started getting worse. Samuel drove me everywhere I needed to go. Now without him, I barely left the house except for grocery runs with my neighbor, Mrs. Green. The BMW was special to your father, I said quietly. Samuel had bought that 1995 BMW 525 I used when Derek was in high school. It wasn't fancy by today's standards, but Samuel had babied that car. He washed it every Saturday morning, changed the oil religiously, and kept it in pristine condition despite its age. It was his pride and joy, the one luxury he'd allowed himself in a lifetime of practical decisions. Keisha knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. Her skin was soft, moisturized. Everything mine wasn't anymore. That's exactly why it needs to go to someone who will appreciate it. I've been wanting to start my own business, a beauty salon. The money from selling the BMW could help me get started. Think about it. Claudia, Samuel would want his car to help family, wouldn't he? I felt tears prick at my eyes. Samuel had always believed in supporting family. When Derek dropped out of college the first time, Samuel welcomed him back home with open arms. When Derek married Keisha after only knowing her for 6 months, Samuel threw them a beautiful wedding reception, even though I could see the concern in his eyes. I don't know, I whispered. Derek leaned forward, his expression earnest. Mom, Keisha's been working as a hairdresser for other people for years. She's really talented. This could be her chance to build something of her own. Dad would understand that, would he? I tried to imagine what Samuel would say, but his voice had grown fainter in my memory with each passing day. The practical side of him would probably agree that a car sitting unused was wasteful. But there was another part of Samuel, the part that lovingly polished that BMW every weekend, that might not be so quick to let it go. How much would it be worth, I asked, though I immediately felt guilty for the question. We had it appraised, Keisha said quickly, pulling out a folded paper from her purse. About $12,000. It's in excellent condition for its age. $12,000. It seemed like so little for something that had meant so much to Samuel. But what did I know about car values? Samuel had always handled these things. I stared at the appraisal, the numbers blurring through my tears. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep the BMW as a tangible connection to my husband. But another part, the part that had been drowning in loneliness for months, desperately wanted to feel useful again, to feel like I mattered to my son and daughter-in-law. If it would really help you start your business, I said slowly, my voice barely audible. Keisha's face lit up. Oh, Claudia, thank you. This means everything to me, to us. She pulled me into a tight hug that smelled like expensive perfume and hairspray. Derek smiled, and for a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to help Samuel wash the BMW on Saturday mornings. Thanks. Mom, Dad would be proud of you for helping family. But as they left that day, taking the BMW's keys and title with them, I felt an emptiness that went deeper than grief. I stood in the garage, staring at the oil stain where Samuel's beloved car had sat for over 25 years. The space looked so much bigger now, so vacant. I ran my finger along the workbench where Samuel used to keep his car maintenance supplies. Everything was still there. The bottles of wax, the chamois cloths, the tire pressure gauge. But the car they were meant for was gone. That night, I lay in bed listening to the silence where Samuel's breathing used to be, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just given away more than a car. I'd given away the last piece of the man who'd loved me unconditionally for 32 years. And for what? The hope that my son might visit more often. The possibility that Keisha might finally see me as family instead of an obligation. I pulled Samuel's pillow against my chest and breathed in the faint scent of his cologne that still lingered in the fabric. "I'm sorry, Samuel," I whispered into the darkness. I hope I did the right thing, but deep in my heart, I already knew I hadn't. 3 weeks after giving up Samuel's BMW, I was sitting in my living room when Keisha walked through my front door like she owned the place. But it wasn't her confidence that made me do a double take. It was what she was wearing. Gold earrings caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through my windows. They were substantial, expensive-looking hoops that swayed as she moved. Around her neck, a delicate gold chain held what appeared to be a real diamond pendant. Her wrist sparkled with a tennis bracelet that looked like it belonged in a jewelry store display case, not on the arm of someone who just used my dead husband's car money to start a business. "Claudia, how are you holding up?" she asked, settling onto my couch without invitation. The bracelet caught the light again as she tucked a strand of her perfectly styled hair behind one of those expensive earrings. "I'm fine," I lied, though my eyes kept drifting to her jewelry. "How's the salon coming along?" Keisha's smile was radiant. "Oh, it's going amazingly well. Better than I ever expected. I've been so busy. I barely have time to breathe." "That's wonderful," I said, but something cold settled in my stomach. "Where is the salon located downtown on 5th Street? You should come by sometime once I get everything fully set up." I nodded, though I had no idea where on 5th Street she meant. And business is already good. Incredible word of mouth. You know, I've always had a talent for making women feel beautiful. She held up her hands, examining her own perfectly manicured nails. "Speaking of which, I should get these redone. I've been so busy. I've been neglecting myself." I stared at those manicured nails, at the jewelry that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 6 months, and tried to make sense of it. How does someone afford $20,000 worth of jewelry from a beauty salon that's been open for 3 weeks? "Those are beautiful earrings," I said. Keisha touched them unconsciously, her smile widening. "Derek bought them for me. He said I deserved something special for working so hard on the business. Isn't he sweet? Very sweet." I agreed, though my voice sounded hollow. Even to myself, Derek had never been the type to buy expensive jewelry. For their anniversary last year, he'd gotten Keisha a gift card to her favorite restaurant. Where was he suddenly getting money for diamond earrings? "And this," she said, touching the pendant at her throat, "was a gift from one of my first clients. She was so happy with her hair that she insisted I take this as payment. Can you believe it? People are just so generous. A client paid for a haircut with a diamond necklace. I wasn't worldly, but even I knew that sounded unlikely. But I nodded anyway, not trusting myself to speak. Derek appeared in my doorway, car keys jingling in his hand. "Ready to go, babe." "Hey, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart," I said, studying my son's face. He looked tired, older somehow, but he was also wearing a new watch I'd never seen before. "How's work going?" "Can't complain." He worked at a mid-level accounting firm, the kind of steady job that paid the bills, but didn't leave room for luxury purchases. "We should get going, though." "Dinner reservations." "Where are you going?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "That new steakhouse on the river," Keisha said, standing and smoothing her skirt. "We've been working so hard lately, we decided to treat ourselves." A steakhouse on the river. I'd seen the advertisements. Entree started at $40. Samuel and I had talked about going there for our anniversary, but he'd always said it was too expensive for what it was. After they left, I sat in my living room trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Keisha's jewelry, Derek's new watch, expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford, even with Samuel's life insurance money. If the salon was doing so well, why hadn't Keisha invited me to see it? Why couldn't she give me a specific address? I walked to the garage and stood in the empty space where the BMW used to sit. Samuel had been so proud of that car, so careful with it. He'd kept every maintenance record, every receipt, organized in a neat folder in his workshop. The folder was still there, sitting on the workbench like a monument to his attention to detail. I picked it up and flipped through the papers. Oil changes, tire rotations, brake repairs. Samuel had documented everything. At the back of the folder, I found something I'd forgotten about. The original purchase receipt from 1995. Samuel had paid $8,000 for the car used. He'd been so excited, calling it a real investment because BMW held their value better than American cars. 25 years later, Derek and Keisha had sold it for $12,000. Not bad for a 25-year-old car, even one in excellent condition. $12,000 should have been enough to lease a small commercial space, buy some basic salon equipment, maybe cover the first few months of expenses. It shouldn't have been enough for $20,000 worth of jewelry and regular dinners at expensive restaurants. I closed the folder and set it back on the workbench, my hands shaking slightly. Samuel had always told me I was too trusting, too willing to believe the best in people. "You've got a good heart, Claudia," he'd say, "but not everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt." But these were my son and daughter-in-law family. Samuel had raised Derek to be honest, responsible. Even if Derek had changed over the years, becoming more distant and materialistic, surely he wouldn't lie to his own mother. Surely he wouldn't take advantage of my grief to fund some kind of luxury lifestyle. Would he? I spent the evening trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. Grief did strange things to people's minds. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there, creating problems where none existed. Maybe Keisha really was just that good at business. Maybe Derek really had gotten a raise he hadn't mentioned. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling where Samuel's shadow used to fall across the moonlight, I couldn't shake the image of Keisha's jewelry sparkling in the afternoon sun. $20,000 worth of gold and diamonds, paid for by the sale of a car my husband had loved more than any material possession he'd ever owned. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Samuel's voice whispered a warning I was finally ready to hear. "Not everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, Claudia. Not even family." 2 months had passed since I'd given up Samuel's BMW, and the guilt had become a constant companion. Every morning, I'd walk into the garage and see that empty space where his car used to be. Every evening, I'd sit in his recliner and wonder if I'd betrayed the man who'd loved me for 32 years. I hadn't heard from Derek or Keisha since that day she'd come over wearing all that expensive jewelry. No phone calls, no visits, no updates on how the salon was doing. It was like they'd gotten what they wanted and simply disappeared from my life. I was folding Samuel's clothes for the third time that week. I kept taking them out of the donation box, unable to let them go. When the phone rang, the number on the caller ID was local but unfamiliar. "Hello," I answered, my voice from lack of use. I rarely spoke to anyone except Mrs. Green when she brought over casseroles she claimed were extras. "Mrs. Rivers, this is Evan Bradley from Bradley Auto Sales. I'm calling about your BMW." My heart stopped. "I'm sorry. What?" "The 1995 BMW 525i. I bought it from your daughter-in-law about 2 months ago. I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but I had the wrong number. Finally tracked you down through the DMV records." I sank into Samuel's chair, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. "Is there a problem with the sale?" "Not with the sale itself, ma'am. But I found something in the car that I think you need to know about. Something your family probably didn't realize was there." "What do you mean?" Mike's voice was gentle, like he was talking to a frightened animal. "Mrs. Rivers? I've been in the car business for 30 years. Your husband's BMW was in remarkable condition for its age. I could tell he really loved that car. When I was doing my detailed inspection before putting it on the lot, I found something unusual. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone." "What did you find?" "There's a hidden compartment behind the glove box. Your husband had it professionally installed probably years ago. Inside, there's a metal box sealed with waterproof tape. It's addressed to you, Mrs. Rivers, in your husband's handwriting." The room started spinning. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, afraid I'd misheard. "A hidden compartment." "Yes, ma'am. It's very well concealed. You'd never find it unless you knew exactly where to look. The installation looks old, maybe 10 or 15 years. Your husband must have put it there and never told anyone about it. Samuel had hidden something in his car. Something meant for me." My mind raced through the possibilities. Important documents. Love letters. I'd thought I'd found everything when I'd gone through his papers after the funeral. "Mrs. Rivers, are you still there?" "Yes," I whispered. "What's in the box?" "I haven't opened it. It's not mine to open, but it's heavy, and I can hear papers rustling inside when I move it. Feels like there might be more than papers, though. Something solid. More than papers." My heart was pounding so hard, I was afraid Mike could hear it through the phone. Samuel had hidden something in his beloved BMW. Something he'd never told me about in 32 years of marriage. What could be so important that he'd kept it secret? "Mrs. Rivers, I think you need to come down here and get this today, if possible. I don't feel right holding on to it any longer." "I don't drive," I said automatically. "I don't have a car anymore." "I understand. Where do you live? I could bring it to you." "This seems important." I gave him my address, and he promised to be there within the hour. After I hung up, I sat in Samuel's chair, staring at the phone, my mind reeling. What had my husband hidden from me, and why? The doorbell rang exactly 58 minutes later. Through the peephole, I could see a middle-aged man in coveralls holding a metal box about the size of a shoebox. Mrs. Rivers, Evan Bradley. I opened the door with trembling hands. Mike was exactly what I'd pictured. Weathered face, kind eyes, the look of a man who'd spent his life working with his hands.
"I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am,"
he said, holding out the box. Your husband clearly loved that car. I've never seen one maintained so well. The box was heavier than I'd expected and cold to the touch. My name was written across the top in Samuel's careful script for Claudia to be opened only after my death. How did you find this? I asked, inviting Mike inside. Like I said, I do a thorough inspection of every car I buy. I was checking the electrical systems when I noticed the glove box was deeper on the outside than the inside. When I measured it, there was about 6 in of space unaccounted for. That's when I found the release mechanism. He pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of the BMW's interior. See this little button here underneath the glove box? It's painted to match the plastic, almost invisible. When you press it and pull on this panel at the same time, the hidden compartment opens. I stared at the photo, amazed. Samuel had been handy, but I'd never known he was capable of something this elaborate. How long would something like this take to install? If you knew what you were doing, a full day? Maybe 2? But the concealment work, making it look factory original, that's professional level. Your husband either had serious skills or he paid someone good money to do this. Right? After Mike left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the box. The tape sealing it was old and yellowed, but still strong. Samuel's handwriting looked exactly like it had on all his careful maintenance records, his shopping lists, his birthday cards to be opened only after my death. He'd known somehow Samuel had known he was going to die before me, and he'd prepared for it. But what could be so important that he'd hidden it away for years, waiting for this moment? My hand shook as I found Samuel's old box cutter in his workshop. The blade sliced through the tape easily, and the lid of the metal box opened with a soft click. The first thing I saw was an envelope with my name on it, written in Samuel's handwriting. Underneath were more envelopes, some official-looking documents, and what appeared to be bank statements. At the very bottom, something wrapped in black velvet. I picked up the first envelope with my name on it. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in Samuel's careful writing. My dearest Claudia, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you found my insurance policy. I pray you never needed to look for this, but I know our son better than you want to believe. I've seen the way he looks at our finances, the way Keisha calculates the value of everything in our house. I hope I'm wrong about them, but if I'm not, this box contains everything you'll need to take care of yourself. I've been preparing for this possibility for 15 years. Ever since Derek dropped out of college the first time, and I realized he might never truly grow up. Everything in this box belongs to you now. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You are stronger than you know. Claudia, you just forgot because I never gave you the chance to prove it. I'm sorry for that. All my love. Samuel. P.S. Check the stocks first, then the safety deposit box key, then the life insurance policies you don't know about. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the letter. Samuel had been planning for this. He'd known Derek and Keisha might try to take advantage of me, and he'd prepared a defense. I reached for the next envelope with numb fingers, Inside were stock certificates, dozens of them, for companies I'd never heard of: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. The dates showed Samuel had been buying these stocks for years, small amounts at a time, never mentioning them to me. The next envelope contained bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed, savings accounts, investment accounts, all in my name. The balances made my head spin. Hundreds of thousands of dollars I'd never known about. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in black velvet, was a small key attached to a tag with an address I didn't recognize. Safety deposit box. Bank of America, Elm Street branch, box 347. I sat back in my chair, surrounded by papers that represented a fortune I'd never known I had. Samuel had been secretly protecting our future, preparing for the day when I'd be alone and vulnerable. And he'd hidden it all in the car he loved most. The one place he knew I'd never think to look, but would eventually have to let go. The car Derek and Keisha had convinced me to sell for $12,000. The car they'd used to fund their luxury lifestyle while I sat alone in this house, feeling poor and forgotten. But I wasn't poor. I wasn't forgotten. Samuel had made sure of that, and suddenly, for the first time since his death, I felt something I'd almost forgotten how to feel. Powerful. The next morning, I called a taxi for the first time in 20 years. Mrs. Green had offered to drive me to the bank, but this was something I needed to do alone. I clutched Samuel's safety deposit box key in my purse like a lifeline, still unable to fully process what I'd discovered the night before. Bank of America on Elm Street was Samuel's old bank, the one we'd used before consolidating everything into our joint account at First National 15 years ago. Or so I'd thought. Apparently, Samuel had kept this account secret all these years. Mrs. Rivers, the bank manager, a professional woman about my son's age, led me to the safety deposit box area. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband was a valued customer for many years." "He was?" I asked, surprised. "How many years?" "Let me check." She consulted her computer. "Looks like he opened this box in 2008. He came in regularly, usually once a month, sometimes twice. 2008. That was right after Derek dropped out of college the first time, when he'd come home talking about get-rich schemes and asking Samuel for money to invest in businesses that never materialized. Samuel had been so disappointed, but he'd never let it show. At least, I thought he hadn't. The safety deposit box was larger than I'd expected, about the size of a file drawer. When I opened it with shaking hands, I gasped. It was full of documents, jewelry, and what appeared to be gold coins. The first folder I pulled out was labeled Insurance Policies. Inside were life insurance documents I'd never seen before. 3 different policies, each worth $500,000, all with me as the sole beneficiary. Samuel's funeral expenses had been covered by what I'd thought was his only policy, a small one through his employer. I'd never known about these others. The next folder was labeled Investment Accounts. More stock certificates, more bank statements for accounts in my name that I'd never signed for. The numbers were staggering. Over $800,000 in various investments, all carefully managed and growing steadily over the years. At the bottom of the box was a manila envelope marked for emergency use only. Inside were birth certificates, Social security cards, a passport with my picture that I'd never applied for, and $20,000 in cash bound with rubber bands. But it was the final envelope that made me sink into the chair the bank had provided. It was thick, stuffed with papers and labeled Derek and Keisha evidence. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside were photocopies of credit reports, financial records, and what appeared to be court documents. Derek had debts I'd never known about. Credit cards maxed out, a defaulted car loan, thousands owed in back taxes. Keisha had a bankruptcy on her record from before they married and 2 previous marriages that had ended in messy financial disputes. There was also a letter from a private investigator dated just 6 months before Samuel's death. Mr. Rivers, as requested, I've completed my investigation into your son's financial activities. Derek owes approximately $87,000 in various debts, not including the tax liens. His wife, Keisha, has a pattern of marrying men with assets and then pressuring them to liquidate those assets for her business ventures. Her first husband lost his house this way. Her second husband's classic car collection was sold to fund a boutique that never opened. I've also documented several conversations recorded with their knowledge during family dinners, where they discuss your assets and express frustration that you haven't simplified your estate planning yet. Keisha has specifically mentioned the BMW multiple times as something that should be sold before it loses more value. I strongly recommend protecting your assets now while you're still able to make these decisions independently. Your wife appears to be unaware of their financial situation or their intentions regarding your estate. Please call if you need any additional documentation. Sincerely, Detective Leon Carter. I sat in that sterile bank room, surrounded by evidence of my husband's secret life, and felt the world tilt on its axis. Samuel had known. He'd known exactly what Derek and Keisha were planning, and he'd spent years preparing for it. The BMW hadn't been sold to fund Keisha's salon. There was no salon. The $12,000 had gone straight to paying off their debts and the expensive jewelry, the fancy dinners, the new watch. All of it was being financed by credit cards they had no intention of paying off. I thought about all the times Samuel had seemed distracted in his final years. All the errands he'd run that he'd never fully explained. He hadn't been hiding an affair or a gambling problem. He'd been protecting me. The bank manager knocked softly on the door. Mrs. Rivers? Is everything all right? I need to make copies of everything, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. All of it. Of course, we have a copier you can use, or I can arrange for our staff to handle it for you. I'll do it myself, I said firmly. Samuel had trusted me with this information. I wasn't going to let anyone else handle it. It took 2 hours to copy everything. When I finished, I carefully placed all the originals back in the safety deposit box, but I took the copies with me. I also took half the cash, $10,000, and one of the life insurance policies. The taxi ride home gave me time to think. Samuel had left me wealthy. Not just comfortable, but genuinely wealthy. The life insurance policies alone were worth $1.5 million. The investments and savings accounts added another $800,000. The cash and gold coins probably totaled another $50,000. I was worth over $2 million. And I'd been living like a pauper, rationing my grocery money, and feeling guilty about heating bills. But more than the money, Samuel had given me something infinitely more valuable. The truth. I wasn't the naive, helpless widow I'd believed myself to be. I was a woman whose husband had loved her enough to spend 15 years of his life protecting her future. When I got home, I spread all the copied documents on my kitchen table and really looked at them for the first time. The stock purchases showed a pattern. Samuel had been buying shares in solid companies every month for over a decade. Never large amounts that I would have noticed missing from our household budget, but consistent investments that had grown substantially over time. The life insurance policies were all term life, bought when he was younger and cheaper to insure. He'd been paying the premiums from a separate account funded by his overtime pay. Money I'd thought he was spending on car parts and tools for his workshop. And the investigation report on Derek and Keisha was thorough and damning. Leon Carter had documented not just their debts, but their pattern of manipulation. The recorded conversations made me sick to my stomach. I could hear my own son discussing my finances like I was already dead, calculating how much my house was worth and whether the BMW would sell better at auction or through a dealer. "She's so out of it since Dad died," Derek's voice said on one recording. "I don't think she even knows what she has. We could probably get her to sign anything if we told her it was for her own good." Keisha's laugh was cold and calculating. "The old woman trusts us completely. She'd give us everything if we asked the right way. We just need to be patient and make her feel like she needs us." I listened to my own voice on the recording, offering them dinner, asking about their day, treating them like the loving family I'd thought they were. The contrast between my warmth and their calculating coldness was heartbreaking, but it was also liberating. For months, I'd been blaming myself for being a bad mother, wondering what I'd done wrong to make Derek so distant. Now, I knew the truth. I hadn't failed as a mother. I'd simply raised a son who'd chosen greed over love. I picked up the phone and dialed the number on Leon Carter's business card. It was time to start fighting back. And thanks to Samuel's careful planning, I had all the ammunition I needed. Leon Carter arrived at my house 3 days later, carrying a briefcase and wearing the kind of serious expression that meant business. He was a compact man in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Mrs. Rivers, I have to say I'm relieved you finally found Samuel's preparations. He was worried sick about what would happen to you after he was gone." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Derek and Keisha had convinced me to give up the BMW just 3 months earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. "How long did you work with my husband?" I asked. "About 8 months before he passed. He came to me after he overheard Derek and Keisha discussing your finances at Thanksgiving dinner. He wanted to know exactly what kind of financial trouble they were in and whether his suspicions about their intentions were justified." Ray opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Samuel paid me to monitor their activities and document everything. What I found was worse than he'd feared. He spread several photographs across the table. They showed Derek and Keisha at expensive restaurants, shopping at high-end stores, Keisha at a jewelry store examining diamond bracelets, all dated within the last 6 months. "They're living completely beyond their means," Rai explained. "The salon story is complete fiction. Keisha hasn't applied for any business licenses, hasn't rented any commercial space, hasn't purchased any equipment. The $12,000 from your BMW went straight to paying off their credit cards, but they immediately ran them up again." My stomach churned as I looked at the photos. While I'd been sitting alone in my house, feeling poor and forgotten, they'd been living it up on Samuel's car money. "There's more," Rai said gently. "After Samuel died, I kept monitoring them on my own dime. I felt like I owed him that much. They've been telling people that you're mentally incompetent, that they're having to take care of your finances because you're too grief-stricken to function properly." "What?" The word came out as a whisper. "They've been setting up a narrative. Mrs. Rivers, making it look like they're the responsible family members taking care of a mentally fragile widow. If they could get you declared incompetent, they'd have access to everything. Your house, Samuel's life insurance, all of it. The room started spinning. But I gave them the car voluntarily. I signed the title over myself. Exactly. And they're documenting every instance where you've needed their help or seemed confused. They're building a case that you're not capable of managing your own affairs. Rye pulled out another document. This is a petition for guardianship that Derek had prepared, but never filed. It's dated 2 weeks after Samuel's funeral. They were planning this from the beginning. I stared at the legal document with my son's signature at the bottom. The petition claimed I was suffering from severe depression and cognitive decline following my husband's death, that I was unable to make sound financial decisions, and that I needed a legal guardian to protect me from making harmful choices. They were going to have me declared incompetent, I asked, my voice barely audible, if the BMW sale hadn't been enough to solve their immediate financial problems. Yes. Samuel suspected they might try something like this, which is why he was so careful to put everything in your name only and document their true intentions. I felt a rage building inside me unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't just about money. They had been planning to steal my freedom, my dignity, my right to live independently. They would have locked me away in some facility while they spent my money and sold my house. What can I do? I asked. Rye smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. Samuel made sure you'd have options. First, you need to secure your assets immediately. Change all your passwords. Put alerts on all your accounts. Make sure they can't access anything. Second, we document their current financial situation and their lies about the salon. Third, we give them enough rope to hang themselves. What do you mean? We let them ask you for more money. Now that you know the truth, we record the conversation. Let them lie to you about why they need it. Let them manipulate you. Then we have evidence of their fraudulent behavior. The idea of facing Derek and Keisha again, of pretending I didn't know what they'd done, made my hands shake. But Ray was right. If I was going to protect myself, I needed more than just Samuel's investigation. I needed current evidence of their deception. I don't know if I can do it, I said honestly. I've never been good at confrontation. Samuel always handled the difficult conversations. Ray's expression softened. Mrs. Rivers, you've survived 32 years of marriage, raised a child, and managed a household for decades. You're stronger than you think. Samuel knew that, even if you don't. That evening, I called Derek for the first time since the day I'd given him the BMW keys. Mom, is everything okay? His voice carried that patronizing tone I'd grown accustomed to, like he was talking to a confused child. I'm fine, sweetheart. I was just wondering how Keisha's salon is doing. I haven't heard any updates. Oh, it's going great. Really great. She's been so busy. She can barely keep up with demand. The lie came so easily, so smoothly. I wondered how many times he'd practiced it. That's wonderful. I was thinking maybe I could help out a little more. I have some money from your father's life insurance that I haven't needed yet. There was a pause, and I could practically hear him calculating. That's really generous, Mom, but we wouldn't want to take advantage of your kindness. It wouldn't be taking advantage. Family helps family, right? That's what Samuel always said. Another pause. Well, if you're sure you can spare it, There are some upgrades Keisha wants to make to the salon. Better equipment. Maybe expand into the space next door. How much would something like that cost? Maybe $20,000. 25 at the most. $25,000 for improvements to a salon that didn't exist. My grip tightened on the phone, but I kept my voice steady. I think I could manage that. Why don't you both come over this weekend and we can discuss it? That sounds perfect. Mom? Saturday afternoon. Saturday's perfect. After I hung up, I called Leon Carter. They took the bait. Good. I'll have everything set up by Saturday. Recording equipment, backup documentation, everything we need. By the time they leave your house, we'll have enough evidence to protect you for years. Saturday arrived gray and cold, matching my mood. Rye had installed tiny recording devices throughout my living room and kitchen, invisible, but capturing everything. I'd practiced what I would say, how I would react, but my hands still shook as I waited for Derek and Keisha to arrive. They came bearing gifts, flowers for me, expensive wine, and warm smiles that I now recognized as completely fake. Keisha was wearing different jewelry than the last time I'd seen her, but it was equally expensive. Derek had on another new watch. Mom, you look wonderful, Derek said, giving me a hug that felt like a performance. Much better than the last time we saw you. I've been feeling stronger lately, I said, which was absolutely true. We sat in my living room, the same room where they'd convinced me to give up Samuel's car. But this time, I was the one in control. So, tell me about these salon improvements, I said, settling into Samuel's chair with the confidence he'd always displayed there. Keisha launched into an elaborate story about new hair washing stations, modern styling chairs, perhaps adding a nail salon component. She spoke with such conviction that I almost wondered if she'd started believing her own lies. It sounds expensive, I said carefully. It is, but it's an investment, Derek chimed in. Keisha's got such a great business sense. This could really set her up for long-term success. And you need $25,000 for all this. Actually, Keisha said, glancing at Derek. We've been looking at the numbers again with permits and everything. It might be closer to $30,000. $30,000. The number kept growing, just like Rye had predicted it would. That's a lot of money, I said, more than Samuel's car was worth. But, Mom, Derek said, leaning forward with that earnest expression that used to melt my heart. This is different. The car was just sitting there, not doing anyone any good. This money would be helping Keisha build something permanent, something that could support our family for years. I looked at my son, at the man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, and saw a stranger. Everything about him was calculated. His expression, his tone, even the way he was sitting. He was performing the role of a loving son while planning to rob me blind. I want to help, I said slowly. But I need to understand something first. They both straightened, sensing a change in my tone. I want to see the salon. Keisha's smile flickered for just a moment. Oh, it's not really ready for visitors yet. It's still under construction. Very messy. I don't mind mess. I just like to see where my money is going. Derek and Keisha exchanged a quick glance. And in that moment, I saw everything Ray had warned me about. The calculation, the panic, the desperate scramble to maintain their lie. Maybe next week, Derek said quickly once they finished the floor installation. "Which address on 5th Street is it again?" I asked innocently. Another glance between them. It's actually moved," Keisha said. "We found a better space on 3rd Street." "That's exciting. What's the address there?" The silence stretched for several uncomfortable seconds. Finally, Derek cleared his throat. "Mom, why all the questions? Don't you trust us?" And there it was, the moment I'd been preparing for. I looked at my son, at the man who'd been planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could steal everything Samuel had left me. And I felt something I'd never felt before. Complete clarity. "No, Derek," I said calmly. "I don't trust you at all." The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. Derek's face went white, then red, then white again. Keisha's mouth fell open, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly looking garish against her pale skin. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Derek tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. "Of course. You can trust us. We're family." I stood up from Samuel's chair, feeling stronger than I had in years. Family doesn't lie to each other, Derek. Family doesn't steal from each other. And family certainly doesn't plan to have their own mother declared mentally incompetent so they can steal her inheritance. Keisha shot to her feet. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're obviously confused. Claudia, maybe you should sit down." "I'm not confused," I said, walking to Samuel's desk and pulling out the folder Rye had prepared for me. "I'm clearer than I've been in months. Would you like to see the private investigator's report? The one that details your bankruptcies, your previous marriages, your pattern of financial fraud?" I opened the folder and spread the photographs across the coffee table. Pictures of them at expensive restaurants, shopping for jewelry, living the high life on money they'd stolen from me. Or maybe you'd prefer to see these. I pulled out the bank statements showing their debt levels. $87,000 in credit card debt. Derek, tax liens, a defaulted car loan, and you, Keisha, with 2 previous husbands who lost everything funding your fictional business ventures. Derek was standing now, too, his hands clenched into fists. "How did you get this? You can't just spy on people." "Your father got it," I said simply. "He spent the last year of his life protecting me from you." The truth hit them like a physical blow. Keisha actually stumbled backward, catching herself on the arm of the couch. "Samuel knew," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. "He knew about your debts. He knew about your plans. He even knew about the guardianship petition you had drawn up to have me declared incompetent." I pulled out the legal document and held it up. "Would you like to read your own signature?" "Derek, where you swore under oath that your mother was mentally incapable of managing her own affairs." Derek's face had gone from white to gray. "Mom, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You were going to steal everything from me and lock me away in some facility so I couldn't stop you. The only thing I don't understand is why you waited so long to file it." Keisha found her voice first, and when she spoke, all pretense of sweetness was gone. "Because we thought you'd just hand everything over voluntarily, like you did with the car. We thought you were too pathetic and grief-stricken to fight back." The words should have hurt, but they didn't. They just confirmed everything I'd already learned about who these people really were. "You're right about one thing," I said calmly. "I was pathetic. I was so desperate for family, so afraid of being alone that I let you manipulate me. But I'm not that woman anymore." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out of my house." Neither of them moved. Derek was staring at the photos and documents spread across my coffee table. Probably calculating how much trouble he was in, Keisha was looking around the room like she was cataloging everything she'd thought would be hers someday. I said, "Get out."
Mom, please.
Derek said, his voice taking on a wheedling tone I'd never heard before. "We can work this out. We made some mistakes, but we're still family." "No," I said firmly. "Family doesn't plan to destroy each other. You made your choice when you decided I was worth more to you. Incompetent, then competent. Now I'm making mine." Keisha grabbed her purse, her face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, enjoy your money, Claudia. Enjoy sitting alone in this house with your dead husband's things, because that's all you'll ever have. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who see me as nothing but a bank account," I replied. She stormed past me, but Derek lingered in the doorway. For just a moment, I saw a flash of the little boy he used to be, the one who'd helped Samuel wash the BMW on Saturday mornings. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. "I never wanted it to go this far." But it did go this far. Derek, you were willing to have me locked away. There's no coming back from that. He nodded, his shoulders slumping, and followed Keisha to their car. I watched them drive away, then closed the door and leaned against it, trembling, not from fear, but from relief. Leon Carter emerged from Samuel's workshop where he'd been monitoring the recording equipment. "You did beautifully, Mrs. Rivers. We got everything on tape. What happens now? Now, we make sure they can never hurt you again. We file restraining orders. We alert all your banks and investment companies about potential fraud attempts. And we make sure everyone knows you're of sound mind and acting independently." Over the next few weeks, I discovered what freedom really felt like. I hired a financial advisor to help me manage Samuel's investments. I bought a new car, not a BMW, but a reliable Honda that I could drive myself after I renewed my license. I started taking art classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for when I was taking care of everyone else. Most importantly, I started making real friends. Not people who wanted something from me, but women my own age who enjoyed my company for its own sake. Margaret from my art class, who made me laugh until my sides hurt. Susan from the library, who shared my love of mystery novels. Dorothy from the community center, who taught me to play bridge and didn't mind that I was terrible at it. 3 months after the confrontation, I got a call from Leon Carter. "Derek and Keisha are getting divorced," he told me. "Apparently, the financial stress was too much for their marriage. Without your money to cushion them, they turned on each other pretty quickly." I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, just a kind of neutral acknowledgement that their story had reached its logical conclusion. "There's something else," Ray said. Derek tried to contest Samuel's estate, claiming there were irregularities in how the assets were hidden from the family. His lawyer dropped the case when we presented all our evidence. Apparently, Derek couldn't afford to pay him anyway. A year later, I was sitting in Samuel's chair, which I'd had reupholstered in a beautiful blue fabric that matched my new curtains. When the phone rang, the caller ID showed Derek's number. I stared at it for several rings, then let it go to voicemail. An hour later, I listened to the message. "Mom, it's Derek. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did to you, what we did. I'm in therapy trying to figure out how I became the kind of person who would hurt his own mother.
I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry."
His voice cracked at the end, and for a moment, I felt the old maternal instinct to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay. But it wouldn't be okay. Some things couldn't be forgiven, and some relationships couldn't be repaired. Derek had been willing to destroy my life for money. He'd planned to have me locked away, to steal everything Samuel had worked for, to leave me helpless and alone. I deleted the message without calling him back. That evening, I sat on my back porch, which I'd had screened in and furnished with comfortable chairs, and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. My neighbor, Mrs. Green, waved from her garden, and I waved back. Margaret would be picking me up in an hour for our weekly dinner at the new Italian restaurant downtown. I thought about Samuel and how proud he would be to see me now. Not the frightened, dependent woman I'd been after his death, but the strong, independent woman he'd always believed I could be. He'd given me more than money. He'd given me the chance to discover who I was when I wasn't defined by taking care of other people. My phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy. "Bridge game tomorrow at Susan's house. She's making those chocolate chip cookies you love. Can you bring the wine?" I smiled as I typed back, "Of course. See you at 2. This was my life now. Simple, quiet, filled with people who cared about me without wanting anything in return. I had more money than I could spend in 2 lifetimes. But that wasn't what made me happy. What made me happy was waking up each morning and choosing how to spend my day, answerable to no one but myself. Samuel's BMW was long gone, sold to fund lies and deception. But his real gift to me, the knowledge that I was worthy of protection, that I was stronger than I knew, that I deserved better than I'd been accepting. That gift would last for the rest of my life. As the sun set completely and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I raised my glass of wine in a silent toast. "Thank you, Samuel," I whispered, "for loving me enough to set me free. Now, I'm curious about you who listen to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here. And now, as this whole journey from an empty garage and a sold BMW to a kitchen table covered in proof and possibility drifts farther away from you, let the sharp edges begin to soften. The sound of a stranger saying, "There's a box here with your name on it." The weight of metal and paper in her shaking hands. The moment she realized she'd been living like she was poor while her husband had quietly made her safe. All of that can start to blur now, like highway lines slipping past under a car on a calm night drive. You've just spent time with a black grandmother who thought she'd given away the last piece of the man she loved, only to discover he'd been protecting her all along. You watched her sit in a bank vault surrounded by stock certificates, insurance policies, and evidence that her son and daughter-in-law saw her as a walking asset sheet instead of a mother. You heard the recordings where they plotted to have her declared incompetent, and you stayed with her as she chose something braver than revenge. She chose herself. Maybe, as you listened, something in your own chest tightened, remembering times you were kept in the dark, or treated like you didn't understand what was really going on with the money, or the house, or the future. If anyone has ever acted like you were too fragile, too naive, or too out of it to be trusted with the truth, let this settle over you like a warm blanket. You are not an afterthought. You are not a burden. You are allowed to know what's happening with your life, your home, and your money. You are allowed to ask questions, to say no, and to walk away from people who only come close when there's something to gain. So wherever you are right now, lying in bed, curled on the couch, or listening in the dark with your eyes already heavy, notice how your body starts to let go. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Let your hands rest instead of brace. Let each breath come in slowly and leave even slower, like waves sliding in and out along a quiet, moonlit shoreline. You don't have to decide tonight who to trust, what to change, or how to protect yourself next. For these next few moments, your only job is to breathe and let your thoughts drift farther and farther away, like papers being stacked into a neat folder and slid gently out of sight at the end of a long, hard day. Let your heart hear this almost like a whisper. You are not invisible. You are not too late. And you are not alone in how this feels. When your eyes are ready to close, let them. Let this story sink to the bottom of your mind like a smooth stone in deep, calm water. And as sleep moves towards you, rest in the quiet truth that you matter, just as you are, exactly where you are tonight.